St. Stephen's Family Life Center. And the reason I'm a real big advocate of us doing our youth programs in churches that's connected to family life centers, because the rest of the community centers are covered by gang territory. So when I went to different places outside of St. Stephen's doing my program, not just you had to deal with the gangs, because the gangs they didn't really bother me or anything, but those there's other kids that wouldn't come to the program because that's gang territory. So that's one of the suggestions that I really have for the faith community is we got to get the churches with the family life centers involved, and we got to get our experts and our specialists and our people that want to do things and not just hire people from your congregation. I really advocate hiring young people that really want to work with young people in youth development for the rest of their lives, like ourselves.
You mentioned the faith community and also just the difficulty of this work. So I just want to ask you, what has sustained you, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally, while trying to do this challenging work?
Really, this is my vocation. This is what God's called me to do with my life. I've been working with youth since I was volunteering, doing summer works in 1997. My first job ever was working with youth. I volunteered in 97. I worked with kids every summer to 2001. I ran into some older men in my mid-20s, told them this is what I wanted to do. They helped me get involved in the community. And I think I'm a lifer in the community. I'm gonna be involved in rebuilding West Louisville, rebuilding the Black community for the rest of my life. This is what God called me to do. I don't know how it's gonna get done all the time, but this is definitely what God called me to do, and this is what I'm gonna do with my life.
Well, Richard, thank you for telling us more about your story. Actually, just want to ask if you have any more that you would like to add. You have talked about how this issue has affected you and your family and what you do and how you sustained yourself. Would you like to add any thing to any of those points?
Yeah, what I like to add is that we definitely need we definitely need a tool in our community that's interested, incubator, a nonprofit incubator, innovation that's interested in people coming off the street like I was 10 years ago, that say, hey, somebody has an ideal, and being willing to work with that person and being willing to work with everyday people in the community like myself. It's been so challenging. Like I said, it's been almost mission impossible. And if you don't have clout politically, if you don't have connections to foundations, if you don't know the right people, I'm talking about the money, the people with the money and the people with the power. There's a whole lot more than our community than just a handful of organizations that the government run to. There's a bunch of us that want to do stuff, but we just don't get the opportunities for whatever reason. And I know that we could do some things that people from the community could do, some things that people from outside the community could never do.
Thank you very much, Richard. I'm going to remind people now that, of course, Richard will be able to tell more story in more detail in the breakout session. So remember what he said here and think about whether or not you want to hear more about that in the breakout session right now. So I'm going to hand it over to Kathy to introduce our next speaker.
Thank you, Japa. And as we move on, I want to remind everyone of the link to the commitment page. That's where you can kind of collect your thoughts and have ideas of how you can be involved with our truth tellers, how you can do your part as well and support them in their work. So next, we will hear from Aubrey Willams. Aubrey is going to tell us now a bit about, first we'll kind of start with your experience personally and then move on to your work. So first, can you give us an idea about how racism and violence has affected you, your family, the group that you work with in your community?
Okay. I'll start by mentioning my father, who was very active in the community prior to my birth, as well as when I was born. He was president of the NAACP. He's also an attorney, as most people know. But he lost his license in the early 80s when I was a little boy. Um, Lost his license for defending one of his clients who he felt like the judge was railroading his client. My father wrote the judge a letter, and his license was suspended for, it was supposed to be 90 days, but that 90 days turned into 5 years. So you can imagine the economic impact it had on my father and his family for standing up for our people. Not only that, but you can imagine what that does to anybody's spirit, and how they continue to parent, how they continue to love, how they continue to live, right? But that's kind of the history of our nation. You know, if a Black man stands up, if he speaks out against the powers that be, then he's risking himself, just as we're doing right now. So how it has affected my family, that would be the first thing. The next thing I'll go to would be the miseducation of myself, attending public schools, not being properly educated on the facts of American history, right? Not even gonna call it Black history, just being lied to about American history. And therefore, you know, that affected the way I saw myself, that affected the way my peers saw themselves in my community of the West End. It affected the way we treated ourselves and treated each other. So a lack of self-worth. It affected the way we treated the community. It affected the way we viewed education. Um, so I'll just give those two examples. Yeah.
Thank you. Tell us the story about how you've been involved in the community and what you're doing or what you want to do. You know, paint the picture about how you want to affect violence in Louisville.
Okay. Well, I've been involved in the community since I was a kid. You know, my mother worked for the city. She was the head of the neighborhood youth board, which is in the Parkland neighborhood. It was in Beecher Terrace, Iroquois, Newburgh, every rough neighborhood in the city, California, Victory Park. There was a site. My mother was over those. As soon as they started, she came home and told me. I recruited all my friends from the Parkland neighborhood. They'll tell you. They were paid, but I wasn't. I was told I couldn't be because of nepotism, because my mother was an employee. So I'm still coming to the meetings, I'm still contributing, I'm still doing everything everybody else is doing, being paid, but I'm not being paid, and I recruited everybody. So I've been involved since then. You know, I took a bad track, as a lot of young Black males do living in the city, and chose to sell drugs. But when I was shot, God brought me back and turned the light bulb on for me. Kenny Boyd got me involved, first speaking with young people in drug court. From there, it led to me speaking in schools. I've spoken in, I can't even remember how many, but the majority of our JCPS schools I've spoken in for free, trying to empower young people about the importance of education, the dangers of the street life, drug dealing, messing with guns, etc. I've gone back to the Jefferson County Youth Detention Center several times to empower those young people. I actually used to go every Saturday, and all these places I've been to speak, as well as countless churches and community centers, probably 90% of it was free, if not 95%. I've walked the neighborhoods of Beecher Terrace, Iroquois, my old Parkland neighborhood, as well as California, Victory Park. I'm the guy that'll talk to a group of kids standing in front of the corner store, standing on the corner, the ones that everyone else will just walk past or, you know, kind of proceed past with caution. You know, I stop and engage them. So I've been doing this work for a long time, knowing that God saved my life, feeling that he saved me for a reason. I've also worked for a number of youth development programs, et cetera. But of course, you know, when you work for an organization that has a mission and a vision, you know, you might be limited in the ideas that you bring to the table. You know, a lot of times they want you to just fit within their structure and do what they hired you to do. But a lot of times you do have innovative ideas and strategies that can be implemented, but you're not allowed to, right? And so I've been wrestling for a long time about whether to start my own program, whether even to continue doing this work, because like Richard said, it is so draining And there's so much red tape and so many hurdles and things that you have to deal with in trying to implement strategies that you know will work and do things you know you're passionate about. But yeah, those are just some of the issues.
Mhm. So tell us a bit about, this is hard work, and just tell us a bit about, what is it that pulls you through? What is it that keeps you going mentally, spiritually, emotionally? What makes you keep in it?
Well, when I was shot at the age of 18, right before he shot me, I said, pull the trigger, I'm ready to die. And my best friend was with me. He can vouch for that. But I said, pull the trigger, I'm ready to die. I had everything materially a young guy could want at the age of 18, right? But I'm empty. America teaches us that if you get this, if you get that, you'll be happy. Well, I had for an 18-year-old, like I had the stuff, but I wasn't happy. So I was like, I'm ready to die. And so I think about how many young guys right now that look like me are ready to die, thinking they're ready to die, thinking they're tough, they're hard, etc., not knowing where your soul will go. And I feel like when I got shot the first time, I got a glimpse of where my soul was going. And that's what really caused me to change, because I don't care. Penitentiary is a temporary experience, and life on earth is a temporary experience, but the afterlife, which I do believe in, is forever. And I don't think we're hard enough or prepared for that, right? And we think we're so ready to die, but we don't know what's on the other side of this life. And I think part of the reason, when I told him, pull the trigger, I'm ready to die, God heard me say, you're not ready to die physically, you're ready to die to that lifestyle. So let me now touch you and show you something different. And he has blessed me with the opportunity to, again, I was kicked out of 5 high schools. I went on to get my GED after that. I also went to JCC, graduated with a 3.5, Black Male Student of Excellence Award, Best English Student on Campus Award. I was the guy in the back of the class. I was a writer for the school newspaper. Again, after I graduated, transferred to Morehouse College, graduated cum laude, and I'm the Black kid from West Louisville that everybody counted out. They was kicked out of 5 high schools. And so what keeps me going is remembering all the other intellectuals from my environment that don't have an opportunity, that maybe I haven't crossed paths with yet, but I know that God saved me for those kinds of guys, those athletes, those scholars who are dealing with challenges in the community that need to hear from and see someone who has made it through. And that's what keeps me pushing, as well as my own family and God.
Thank you. We have a couple more minutes left. Is there anything else that you'd like to share in this section? Because I think you've got a lot of ideas to share for the next one.
I do. It has to change. The games have to stop. The games have to stop. What has been done, like I've spoken with elected officials, it's enough time for the meetings are over, the discussions, the talks, like it's enough time for that. It's time to really put our feet to the pedal and make something happen. It's time to make the corrections that need to be made and empower the people that have the energy, the skills, the ability to do this work. It's time to empower us, support us in a way that we can actually do this work and try to make a change in this.
All right. Thank you, Aubrey. Joppa, you're on mute. Joppa, you're on mute.
Our next speaker, I only met recently, and I remember him telling a story about how a young man came to his office and how that young man didn't believe in himself, and how he was able to give that man a picture of what was really possible for themselves, and how he could turn himself around and make a difference. And that's Mr. Shabazz. So I'm very honored to ask him right now to tell us his story. Again, reiterating the questions, how racism and violence has affected him and his family, what that has inspired him to do in the community, and what has sustained you, Savvy, in this work. So I'll turn it over to you now and share your story, please.
Good evening, everyone. Great testimony, Richard, Aubrey. Let me give thanks just for inviting me into the space, to be in the space. And I just want to bring to the floor that we all have done work together at some point. So when you hear this story, you were here, Richard will know at what part when he came into my life and I met him. Aubrey knows at what points, and I put an S on points because we've interacted a lot. But I can't share my story without specifically pointing out violence and racism. You will hear it. I've been here for 46 years in September. You will hear it. So I always like to uplift my hometown of Paducah, Kentucky. It's in the extreme western part of Kentucky. I've been here in Louisville for about the last 10, maybe 11 years. I tell people all the time that I come by way of government vacation, where they pay for your clothes, they pay for your cable, they pay for your lights, your food, and then they sit you on the sidewalk with a couple of dollars and maybe a clear TV, a 13-inch in your hand, expect you to just pick up where life left off. So I want to go back and let you know exactly where I started from. About 19, I was born in the 70s. I was raised in the 80s. So I got to see a lot of things that a lot of young people missed. Like I got to see Thriller, right? I got to see Magic Johnson play, right? I got to see all those great things growing up. I got to see the Chicago Bears play, But I also experienced a house fire in 1979. And I was young, and that house fire sent me and my mother, my sister, and several other relatives out to the projects that I spent the next 10 or 12 years in, Elmwood Court, which is the largest projects in Paducah, Kentucky. And out there, I saw a little bit of everything that you could see. And I want to bring light to my mother because I know that she done everything that she could to make sure that I didn't see or experience any of that. But it was impossible, to keep me away from that. Murders, shootings, you name it, any type of violence you can think of, it came with those projects. I seen the drug using, I seen the drug dealing. I wanted to get into sports and start watching a lot of sports. I remember a relative coming and picked me up. I got a cousin that's the same age as me, and we played sports together. My first sport was baseball. I ran track. Trying to love in football, but we also struggled. To keep our lights on, to keep the gas on, to keep a car, to keep cable, phone. I remember when we moved out of the projects, I think that was one of the biggest mistakes decisions that my mom made. And I know she did it out of great intentions from her heart, to get her children out of those projects. But I had never experienced some of the things that was happening as far as with losing utilities. But I'm thankful to have a support system with my grandfather, my aunts, my uncles. And I had an aunt that lived around the corner, and I remember giving her phone number out to people. And I remember stopping by her house and staying over for a few hours just to use the phone because they had a phone. But we had a good system. I lived through the ongoing war on drugs. So I got to see the introduction of crack and see what it can do to a family and what it can do to a community. Of course, I played sports. I went to school. I was the average student. And I remember my freshman year, I missed maybe one day. My sophomore year, I missed 2 days. My junior year, I missed 16 days. My senior year, I may have missed 6. Something was happening about that time, and that was about the time when crack hit that area of West Kentucky. And I wanted the American dream as well. And a lot of the movies that were coming out, Boys in the Hood, Men's Society, I seen a different side to that. I wanted to be the characters that was in those movies as well. So they did their justice as well. Went through high school, maybe had an opportunity to go to college. Pretty decent athlete. I say decent because there was a lot of athletes that was a lot better than me, and I come from a family of athletes as well. So I hit the streets. I had a group of friends, that I grew up with, and that's what they were doing. Shortly after graduation, that's what I dedicated to. And I found myself in the streets for the next 21 years, dodging the police, dodging bullets, robberies, you name it. I ran into it out there in those streets. There's not much that I have not seen dealing with that. Petty crime after another. doing 2 or 3 days here, 10 days here in the county jail until I landed the big charge. And it landed me a total of 16 years. And I ended up doing a total of 38 months. And I went in, it was my first time, you know, you have all your buddies that you're in the street with, you know, they're in there with you. And I came out, you know, and I'm gonna be honest, I tried to do everything that I possibly could to maintain a job and walk away from that. And I maintained employment. 90 days, 60 days, 120 days. I'm the first one at work. I'm the last one to leave or work overtime or work weekends, but I'm always the first one to get laid off. Why was this? Because you needed 3 periods in order to pull unemployment. So they always laid you off right before you could not draw unemployment. So I found myself doing the same thing that I was doing, the fact that got me into the penal system as well. So I ended up catching another charge that stacked another 12 years on top of that, and I ended up with 28 years, a total of 16 plus 12, 28 years. I served a total of 5.5 years. I moved around the state to 9 different institutions. They would come and wake you up at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. They say, wake up, you're going to such and such, you're going to such and such, and you grab everything up and you get moved out. I got an opportunity to come to Louisville, to Dismas Charities, and there I wanted to study my education. I'd been to school and got a certification as a carpenter and blueprint writing, but nobody taught me how to run a business. They only taught me how to work for other people. And laying in the penal system for 4 years, 38 months, I lost that trade. So I wanted to go back to school and get a different type of education, and I got the opportunity. I had a case manager, and I waited on the list for 6 months just to go to school at Jefferson Community and Technical College. And when the list came out, the individual informed me that going to JCTC and U of L would be a waste of time and money, and that they would eat me alive, and it'd be a waste of resources. And I stood out in front of the director's office after he told me that for almost 4 hours, my knees buckling. I refused to go to count, which was just one of the major offenses in the Kentucky penal system. And I spoke to him, and that case manager had put in my file that I couldn't go to college because the highest grade I had completed was 11th grade. This was not true. My sister had sent me a copy of my high school diploma, and she sent me a transcript of when I graduated from West Kentucky Tech as well and got my certification. And when I showed this to the director, he changed my case manager, and he wrote my name on the list and gave me the opportunity to go to JCTC, where I studied sociology. I studied African-American history. I was the first individual to graduate the African-American Studies certificate and earned that at JCTC. I earned one of the highest awards, the Outstanding Achievement Award in Humanities. I made the Dean's List, and this was unheard of when I was in high school, because I was taught as long as you had a 2.0, you could go play ball. And that's all I ever shot for. That was my standard, right? So I graduated from there, transferred on to U of L. I'm here in Louisville, Kentucky, not knowing exactly what I want to do. I'm working at Packaging Unlimited and all these other places. And I had a younger guy that I was incarcerated with. He told me that my problem was I was applying for the wrong jobs. He said that I needed to be in a community, in a boys club, a community center, working with young people, working with people just like me. But where I'm from, those type of jobs didn't exist. And when I started applying myself, I landed a job at the Louisville Urban League. I got a shot to develop an initiative, Zones of Hope. We can go back to the neighborhoods that Aubrey grew up in and he named, because we specifically work with those neighborhoods, Russell, Shawnee, Parkland, California, and Newburgh. I just wanted to test myself and see if I still could say it, because I haven't said it in probably 8 years. And that's where I met Richard at. And when we built that initiative out, I continued to work with Aubrey, with YVPRC, and all the other initiatives that they had going on. While I was incarcerated, I read a lot. I wrote a lot. So a lot of the things that I learned with African-American studies, I picked up Pan-African studies at U of L, and that put a pride back in me that I never knew existed. And I think that's one of the issues that we have to deal with in this community, is knowing who we are. Once I knew who I was, I knew what I was up against, and I knew what I had to give back to other people as well. I had struggles. I can paint this picture and make it look like an all-American story. But when I tell you I came home from incarceration, again, I go back, they let me out with a laundry bag, a TV, and about $3.40 to my name. I had to go to a transitional house. I didn't hardly have any relatives up here at all. And it came equipped with all the mice and the roaches that you can think of. The oven didn't work. There was no hot water in the bathroom. And across the street was a club that was popping every Wednesday and every Friday and Saturday. which was the lure. It could have lured me right back into doing the same thing. And I found myself talking to someone. I had the opportunity to study a lot of different religions, Christianity, More Science Temple, 5 Percentile Nation of Gods and Earths, Buddhism, Hinduism, and African spiritualities, Orisha, Dogon, Yoruba. So I have a broad view of that. But I laid there and I spoke to someone and I told them, I said, if I get an opportunity to get out of this, I won't never return. My mother had had a stroke. I didn't know if she was going to see the next day or not. And I made a promise to that individual or whoever that was that I was speaking to. And I made a promise to myself that it was over. So I got involved in the community. Left from Zones of Hope, built that initiative out, went to Reimage, got the opportunity to work with people just like me and do case management work, people that have brushes with the system. Me and Aubrey got to work together with Pivot to Peace. It's a violence prevention initiative. I think it's one of the best violence prevention initiatives in this city and has been for a while because we get to work directly with the individuals. I developed my own organization, Life Coach Each One Teacher and Reentry Fellowship while I was at Green River, and I continued to develop it, trainings. I was elected president of All of Us in Louisville and established that here the last 2 years and just networked and joined a lot of different organizations around the city and around the nation, FICPFM, Be Me. I found myself getting a day named after me. I don't know what credit I want to give the guy that actually named the day after me, but I did get a day named after me for the work that I had done. And that day is June the 7th. We do a lot of voting work and a lot of support of people that are coming home from prison and people that are currently incarcerated. We support those individuals and we raise those voices the best we can so those voices can be heard and get those individuals prepared and give them the same opportunities and resources that I had when I was coming home as well. I filed for a pardon in 2019. Andy Bashir asked me to file for a pardon. I did that, and he signed the pardon November the 12th of last year. And that's pretty much the story. So I've seen a lot of the issues that we're speaking about as far as racism, as far as the things that we deal with in the city. But, I had the opportunity to get in some spaces locally and nationally as well. I'm the type of person I've got to bring everybody else with me. So I hope you enjoyed the story, and I hope you guys was able to see what I was able to see. And I'm here to grant the opportunities to individuals the same way I was granted those opportunities as well.
Kathy, I know you next going to work with Dr. Kniffley, but I just want to remind everybody about the commitment forms that were mailed to you, and that you've heard some of these stories, and remind you that one of the real reasons for having this forum is to help people make connections and decide to support the work that our talents are doing. So now, Kathy.
Great, thank you, Savvy. And now I'd like to introduce Dr. Stephen Kniffley. And Stephen, if you could just sort of walk through, give us the story of how you have personally been touched by racism and violence in Louisville, how that's affected your family, and then if you can also get into the story of your work, how you're involved with, who you work with, and go from there. You're still on mute right now.
Yes, thank you so much. And I just want to first just offer a thanks to all the brothers that came before me. I appreciate your vulnerability, appreciate your authenticity, and I appreciate your honesty in sharing your voice during this time. So my name is Stephen. I'm grateful to be here in this space and to share a little bit about my particular narrative. So as I think about how to start this conversation, there's this quote that says, what they'll be is what they'll see. What they'll be is what they'll see. And if I think about the environments that I grew up in, I did not see anyone that looks like the things that I'm doing now. I didn't see anybody like that. So there was no doctors. The folks in my family that were successful, that were males, were all athletes. And so just this idea that there was no space for someone to pursue innovative work in an academic setting. Additionally, when I will look for representation in the media, when I will look for validation and affirmation in my school setting, I would oftentimes not receive, I wouldn't receive any of that. I was oftentimes discouraged. I was oftentimes felt misunderstood. Oftentimes felt like I wasn't here to do the things that I feel like I've been called to ultimately do. I believe that I was called to be here on this planet to be a healer. That's why I'm here. I'm here. I'm here to help heal folks and support folks that feel misunderstood, that feel devalued, that feel unaffirmed, and that feel like they have no other spaces to exist in life. And I believe that I came to that mission based on their own feelings of not being valued, not being affirmed, and not being understood, both as a youth and ultimately up into my adulthood as well. And so I think what that has led me to in my space is the work that I do now, which is working as a psychologist. I am only a Black male psychologist because I met another Black male psychologist. If I had not had the opportunity to meet this individual, who knows what I would be doing at this point. And so I believe very strongly that we're all here for a purpose. And oftentimes our purpose is just to be present so we could be seen and so people can know what is possible for us. Um, I do a lot of work around racial trauma. I run the Collective Care Center, which is the only racial trauma clinic here in Louisville and one of very few in the entire US, where we provide spaces for folks to heal from the racism and discrimination that all of us have been talking about up until this point. As a part of that work, we provide education to those folks that are looking to understand more about what is race-related stress and trauma. Many of us know what it is that we're experiencing, but we don't have a name for it. We don't have a term for it, and we don't know how to get healing from it as well. And so we provide that community space for that to happen. Additionally, we provide service. So all the services at the Collective Care Center are free. I believe that mental health and access to mental health services is a social justice issue. And so it would not do our communities a good service if we charge folks money that they couldn't pay to receive the services that only we can provide here in the city. Today, we've seen, uh, last year we saw about 100 clients in our center. We've been supporting folks through all the police shootings that have happened over this past year. We've been supporting folks through the pandemic and the disparate ways in which that's impacting Black and Brown folks. We've been supporting folks throughout the last administration, the difficulties that folks are encountering there as well. Last thing that we do is because I believe that my role here isn't just to serve and to provide service, but it's also to provide spaces for folks to realize that they could be healers too. It is my understanding at this point that here in the city of Louisville, I'm our only Black male child psychologist, which is not something to be proud of. It's something to actually be quite ashamed of, to know that there's only one person in this entire city that is a Black male that can see kids. That should not be the case. But the reason why that happens is because, like myself, we don't believe as Black males that we have the ability to heal. Folks have told us that we lack the skill set, that we lack the empathy, that we lack the emotional kind of acumen to be able to provide healing to those folks. And so my goal has always been to provide spaces where other Black males, other persons of color can realize their healing potential from within, and then to be able to translate that into a formal skill set by becoming a psychologist, therapist, etc. And so one of the things that we do in addition to community education, providing an accessible service, is also just providing a space where Black and Brown folks can learn how to engage in the work of racial trauma healing. And so we provide that type of service as well. It has been an amazing journey to be a part of this road. It's been amazing to see the number of Black males that I've been able to support in becoming psychologists, knowing that for every additional Black male that's out there, There will be 2 more Black males out there. There will be 3 Black males out there. And so I won't be the only one by myself. It's been amazing to be a part of the journey of providing healing in a space where this week we will be continuing the mourning for Breonna Taylor and for the other Black and brown bodies that have been murdered throughout this country, and to know that there's a center right here in the city of Louisville that is providing space for folks to heal and to grow from those challenging circumstances. And it's also just been an amazing opportunity to continue to educate folks about an experience that we've been encountering for the last 400 years in regards to racism and discrimination in this particular country, and to be able to finally put a name to it in regards to race-related stress and racial trauma. So that's a big part of my narrative, being able to see myself in spaces, to help other folks to be seen in spaces, and to continue to uplift Black and brown folks throughout this city.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your work, and thank you for doing your work. Now I think we will turn it to Rabbi Joe. He is going to kind of wrap us up and move us on. So.
Can I say something first, Joe, just to remind
Good job.
just remind people about the links that are in your chat for the breakout sessions for each of the panelists. There's a link for Richard and for Aubrey and for Savvy and Stephen. So make sure you're aware of those and can use those if you for some reason they don't work. You can go to the landing page. The links are also included there. And so with that, Rabbi.
I was asked to offer a prayer to sort of close out this portion and lead us into the opportunity to really be able to meet more personally and directly with the truth tellers that we've gathered. But I think in a lot of ways, what we've been listening to is it's a better prayer than anything I could construct. So with thanks to Richard Whitlock and Aubrey Willams and Shabazz and Dr. Stephen Kniffley for the work that they've been doing and the spirit that's sustained them, let me just offer these words. We cannot merely pray to God to bring about a world of justice, for the world was made in such a way that we must find our own path to justice for ourselves and for our neighbors and for the community in which we live. We cannot merely pray to God to root out prejudice, for we already have eyes with which to see the common humanity of all people, if we would only use them rightly. We cannot merely pray to God to end hunger, for we already have the resources with which to feed the entire world, if we would but use them wisely. We cannot merely pray to God to end despair, for we already have the power to clearly lift up the communities that give, and to give them hope, if only we would use that power justly. We cannot merely pray to God to end disease, for we already have the great minds with which to search out cures and healings, if we would only use them equitably and for the good of the community as a whole. Therefore, we pray instead for strength, for determination, and for willpower, to do instead of to merely pray, to become instead of to merely wish, that our world may be safe and that our lives may be blessed. May these be our prayers. May these be our deeds. May the work of our hands be blessed. May the work of our hands bring blessing. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you all for joining us for this part. And as Japa said, please continue by touching one of the links and spending some time, taking the opportunity to spend some more time with one of our truth tellers in breakout session. We look forward to seeing you there.